I believe that WWE Monday Nitro, one of the first shows to take on and defeat WWE's flagship for several years in the 1990s, was only called WWE Monday Nitro because if you said it fast enough, it sounded a bit like WWF Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw, Monday Nitro. Like those Americans, you've got your uppers and your downers on your clickers, and you can sometimes mistakenly find the wrong wrestling show on the wrong channel, and you might look and be like, hey, the ring's a bit different, but it's still got wrestlers in it. And Eric Bischoff, before he was a grifter, was a little bit of a tinker, and this was right around the time he was trying to compete in every single way. The documentaries always bang on about how he revealed the results, how he signed talent, and all that sort of stuff. There was other little ways, and I genuinely believe this is one of them. I think he just got his kicks at the time out of winding Vince McMahon up. Vince McMahon wouldn't even name him on television. It was Ted Turner's organisation. And I think he liked getting in those ways, like, Royal Rumble in January, 30-man institution. 60-man one month before. 2 Rumbles, isn't it? 1 ring, how about 3 actually? And it just speaks to the sort of the mindset of Eric Bischoff at the time, where he thought if he can court marketplace confusion and steal viewers at the same time, he'd leave Vince rattled and scared by it all. And I actually like it as a bit of business as well. It's pretty canny, even if it is just something that I've made up in my own head.
Dean Ambrose leaving WWE is a work, ladies and gentlemen. And it has been for the past 5 years, is it? Yeah. I'm sticking to my guns, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm doing a bit, ladies and gentlemen.
They sent this guy over there to sabotage the competition and, well, mission accomplished. Look.
Why would he leave that behind?
Who really caused the problems with CM Punk? Was it the Elite? Or was it the guy who forced Rocky 3 down his throat? You've got to ask yourself that question, really. Forces, along with a few other people, forces CM Punk out, their numbers start dwindling, and sooner or later, he's coming home. Teased, of course, at WrestleMania of this year. Little Shield tease just to remind you, hey, Dean, don't worry, we're thinking about you. And answer me this. How many matches has Dean Ambrose had in AEW? My point has been proven, ladies and gentlemen.
So I'm going to be honest with you, I am not the biggest conspiracy person in the world. It's just not what I like putting my energy into, because when I do that, my brain typically explodes when I think too hard about these things. But there is one that I do think of a lot, really, and it's quite a recent history kind of example. But it's to do with Cody Rhodes, because when Cody Rhodes came to WWE, well, he came back to WWE, I thoroughly believe that WWE's original medium to long-term plan with Cody was to bury him. I think they were thinking, right, we've got a guy here who's so integral to all things AEW, our new biggest rival. We're going to bring him back, we're going to give him the big heroes return stuff, like all that. We're going to make him look decent at the start, and then eventually when he comes up against the real top players within WWE, he's just not going to have enough in him. He's just not going to be up to that level, and he's going to stumble, and it's going to make AEW look inferior by comparison. I really feel like that was the way things were going, but then Cody Rhodes happened. Cody Rhodes, just over that next year or so, he had those 3 matches against Seth Rollins, and then straight away everyone's going to go, well, if they were going to bury him straight away, why would they let Seth Rollins lose to him 3 times? He was like a Mr. WWE if ever there was one. Well, again, it's just to try and build him up. I think they were going to build him up initially and then feed him to a Roman, have him lose, and then not challenge again, and it'd just be like that was the story. I feel like that could have been something that they would have done, because let's be honest, just look at history in WWE. They've done it time and time again with WCW stars. They just brought them in, made them look okay, and they just have them stumble against the true top WWE players. It's what they do. They're petty, and that's how they make examples out of the competition. It's what they've done in the past. So I just felt like that was where we were going. But now Cody, when he came back from his pec tear and all that stuff, the momentum that the character had, it just felt like, okay, and this whole finishing the story stuff, that just started building and building and building, and it got to a point where it was like, well, we can't deny this guy. He's literally undeniable now. And yes, I know that he did stumble at WrestleMania and he wasn't able to get the job done and win the title there. He wasn't able to do it at WrestleMania 39, but again, the momentum was just so strong. It was like, well, it's going to happen sooner or later, and if it doesn't, we're going to riot. WWE probably thought in their minds, well, okay, yeah, this might just be a flash in the pan. It might just be, he's back, he looks a bit different, it might just be that kind of excitement that's going to carry him to one WrestleMania, but it just kept going and going and going. And I think that eventually just forced WWE to be like, well, we kind of have to consider this guy as our new top star now and like really push him as that and just get behind him as a company. I don't think this was the plan. I don't think at all this was the plan. I feel like WWE have just had to kind of flip-flop and change things up on the fly. Like you could see with this year, they were clearly just thinking, oh, okay, we could probably get away with like bringing the Rock back and having Rock versus Roman Reigns. The Cody thing, it's going to go away. But it didn't. It did not, because people wanted Cody and we got there to WrestleMania 40. I also seem to remember that there were reports at one point of like Vince McMahon not having really solidified plans that he wanted to make Cody champion at some point down the line. So that wasn't even a given. So again, it makes me think that maybe there wasn't plans to make him into this real main event top tier star. But I've rambled on a lot there. I think initially that was not the plan at all. Like, we weren't looking to make Cody into this megastar. That was not why they brought him in. They didn't go, yeah, there's a guy that we could make our new John Cena. That is not the plan. I think fully they were going to bring Cody in and just have him lose to all the real top players after like a 6 months or whatever it was of like a decent push. And that's just how it would have gone. I think that was the plan. That is my conspiracy theory. Yes, there it is, so do with that what you will.
I believe that when CM Punk was backstage at WWE Raw while still under AEW contract in April 2023, that he agreed there and then to rejoin the company once he was out of AEW. I'm not saying that he said to Paul Levesque, hey, Punk brother, I'll get myself fired or anything like that, but I think that something was agreed on that meeting. We covered it on the channel, obviously quite extensively, because what the hell is an AEW person doing in WWE show without permission? And the reporting at the time was he was only really there for about 20 minutes, and then he got kind of moved along. Triple H was like, you can't be here, you're under contract, blah, 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 blah. But this is a company, WWE, that maybe isn't always the most respectful of people's contracts. We have learned through the rumor mill over the past couple of years, various people they've tried to poach. Some they've been successful in, it seems. Allegedly. I'm not making those accusations. And also, CM Punk, say what you will about CM Punk, but he's not a dumb man. He's not an idiot. Like, he knows that if he goes to WWE Raw, people are going to be talking about it and it's going to make the headlines and blah, 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 blah. And he also knows that he can't just go to Raw to do what? It's not believable, the idea that he went there just to mend fences with The Miz.
Catch like, The Miz, you know?
Yeah, I was just seeing my good old friend Big Mike over here. It's a load of old baloney. I do believe that something bigger went down when he was at that Raw. It was in Chicago, right?
It was in Chicago.
Yeah, it's not like he flew himself to Houston or something. And you know, him and Triple H had like there was a very wide chasm between these two before that photo backstage at Survivor Series. Can you mend that over the course of such a short space of time, or is April to November when he returned a bit more believable? Ooh. Conspiracy.
Wrestling conspiracy that I genuinely believe, even though I don't believe it, but you know, it's hard to come up with stuff when everybody is always taking the good ones, is that in the late 90s, Vince McMahon sent Vince Russo to WCW to make WCW even worse than it already was. And I want to make it clear that even though WCW was trash at that time, you can still laugh at it. Judy Bagwell on a pole or forklift, whatever the flub it was, is one of the greatest things that's ever happened in the history of sports entertainment, because it's so stupid, I can't believe that anyone wrote it down on a piece of paper and then said, we're going to do it, guys. We're absolutely going to do it. So when all of a sudden you do decide that it was WWE trying to infiltrate WCW, it actually makes more sense than somebody thinking this would make for good television and this will keep our very old school and hardcore wrestling audience invested in what we're trying to do. Because again, I don't want to get into tribalism here. One of the reasons WCW fans didn't come and watch WWE once WCW had died in 2001 is because they didn't like the WWE product. So why anybody would go over there and try and introduce the WWE product, you have to, if I know this, and I'm an idiot, the people on the inside who are smarter than I must have known this too. So again, if McMahon told Russo this is what you're going to have to go and do, then all of a sudden the David Arquette stuff makes sense, turning Goldberg heel makes sense, the cattle prod makes sense. I don't care that Kevin Nash ended the streak. Somebody had to end it. But the cattle prod was dumb. There was probably some stupid stuff with Sting. They always did stupid stuff with Sting. That was before Russo was there. Vince Russo made himself the champion after he came out and was very verbal, saying, I'd never do this, I don't want to be a television character. And he was a television character and everything at Back to the Beach 2000. Obviously, the New Blood Rising pay-per-view is the real bad thing. I remember, was it 3 Count versus the Young Dragons, whatever it was. And they're fighting over a record deal. It's a record deal on a pole match. So in that scenario, that's been 2000, 2001. In that scenario, you don't get a record deal by being a good band. You get it by beating other people that may be good enough to get a record deal up and climbing a ladder and grabbing a piece of paper. So I think we can all agree I've totally smashed this one. Vince Russo never left WWE. He definitely still worked there, and then once WCW was done, they just, you got to keep the ruse alive. So they had to fire him. It's a bit like the Brian Pillman stuff, and now nobody's ever going to know the truth.
I honestly believe that WWE is testing the patience of CM Punk, and I believe that this conspiracy theory is true for two reasons. The first reason is that they just want to see if he behaves before they basically do the whole top star treatment. Because if you notice, he's positioned and he seems happy with this lot, which is in stark contrast to like 2011, 2012, as the number 3 babyface now behind Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. And I just think that knowing the baggage with which he's now forever associated from his time in AEW, that they don't want to go all in on him just automatically headlining a WrestleMania show or that sort of thing, or really leading Monday Night Raw, for example, until they can be sure that they can put the thumb on him. If you notice, when he first turns up on Monday Night Raw, it's the second appearance since the return. Obviously the first one is at Survivor Series. He says something that I just went, Leonardo DiCaprio, that meme. Because he said on June 27, 2011, Hamflett?
Yeah.
This place essentially needs to change. I'm paraphrasing. He says, 13 years later, 12 years later, whatever it was, I've changed. It struck me that he's said, I have changed. The subtext of which is, maybe this place didn't need to change, now it's a problem all along. And it just, having that written for him, or even if he's written it himself, it's a bit like, you've sort of gone back there with your tail between your legs. He'll frame it himself as, I just left the number 2 promotion behind. I was just run by amateurs. Didn't really fancy her anyway, sort of thing. That just feels to me that was pointed. And the second thing, right, is that since 2022, CM Punk, alongside Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler of FTR, have formed the Bret Hart Appreciation Society. Bret Hart once had a almost move-for-move recreation. CM Punk had a move-for-move recreation match with Dustin Rhodes, very similar to that which Bret Hart had with Goldust once upon a time. He has used pink and black in his attire. He's spoken about how much he loves Bret Hart in the media, on TV, forever. What happens to CM Punk when WWE finally convinces Bret Hart, since the Appreciation Society was formed, to come back to television? He gets written off 2 weeks before in an injury angle and then comes back a week later. It just feels to me like they know what they're doing a little bit, and knowing Paul Levesque and how infamously petty he is purported to be, I think he's getting a kick out of it. I think he likes that almost as much as he likes shitting the bed in 25-minute deathly silent WrestleMania matches.
WWE released something like 80 people in 2021, and I don't want to make light of people losing their jobs and stuff. And at the time we were talking about it from the perspective of they're probably trying to make themselves more attractive to businesses that want to buy them or go into collaboration with them. We did eventually get TKO after all. I think there is truth to that, but I also think there's truth that it was deliberate to see if they could bloat AEW's roster. Because AEW was snapping up a lot of contracts at the time through the indies and had established themselves as an attractive place to work if you were, a serious wrestler. They had some really big names in there already, and WWE were just flush with people that they could get rid of. And I think some of the choices they made were deliberate. I mean, Keith Lee was on the main roster doing stuff, nobody cared about, but he had so much more potential to give. But they cut him, Swerve, Ruby Soho, there was Buddy Matthews, all these guys went to AEW, Paul White, there was loads of people, Andrade, Lana even for a cup of coffee. There was obviously loads of people that didn't go to AEW, but I do think it was kind of like, well, let's see what happens, because they've been buying all these contracts, maybe we can bloat their roster. And I mean, sure enough, that's exactly what happened, right? Even the criticism 3 years later still is that AEW has too many people. So I don't know, I wonder if this was kind of on purpose.
Vince McMahon sent Vince Russo to WCW to purposely sabotage the product. Now, this is all went down towards the end of, October of 1999. There was supposedly a disagreement between Vince McMahon, Vince Russo, due to the arrival of SmackDown and the increased workload that brought with it for Russo and also for Ed Ferrara. Because you had, August it was that SmackDown premiered? Well, there was the one-off episode in April that kind of tested the waters, but the show properly arrived in August. Russo and Ferrara were gone by October of that year, 1999. I'm not necessarily saying Vince McMahon sent Russo to WCW per se, but more that Vince was well aware that Vince Russo could damage the WCW product if he was given any sort of power. While some of the WWF Attitude Era content was pretty questionable at the time and really has not aged well here in 2024, the Val Venuses, the Brawl for Alls, the general use of the female talent, just nah. But Russo's ideas were filtered through Vince McMahon. Plus, there were people like Jim Ross and Jim Cornette to bring a little bit of balance to the table as well. In WCW, though, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara had pretty much free reign. There was no filter, nobody to answer to, at least on the creative side of things. But even then, Russo only lasted a couple of months before he walked out on WCW. Kevin Sullivan had kind of filled that void, but then he'd be gone, and Russo would be back by, March of that year, I think it was? No, April maybe. And they deliver such delights as vacating every single WCW title. There was the Stacy Keibler pregnancy, Judy Bagwell on a forklift, the whole Bash at the Beach 2000 debacle with Hulk Hogan, Goldberg not following the script. Russo made himself the world champion. Jesus, man. And just so much other dumb shit. So, I don't think that Vince McMahon sent Vince Russo to WCW as such, but I do think that Vince McMahon fully believed that Russo going to WCW would play a massive part in bringing down that company, which obviously it did, with WCW closing its doors for good, barely 18 months after Vince Russo arrived. Again, I'm not blaming Vince Russo entirely for the downfall of WCW, but there is a significant role there for him in that fall from grace. Although it wasn't, to be fair, it's not like it was on a massive high point when Russo went in, but he certainly helped put some final stakes in the coffin of poor WCW.